Welcome to another edition of Big in Biz with DiViz. I'm Craig DiVizzio, and my guest today is Treva Presley. She is Vice President of Talent Management at Transportation Insight /NTG. If you are interested in getting the most up-to-date tips on how to manage your career, how to secure a mentor, and how to use diversity to your advantages, she's got those tips for you. Stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to another edition of Big in Biz with DiViz. I'm Craig DiVizzio, President of DiVizzio International, and my guest today is Treva Presley. She is currently the VP of Talent Management at Transportation Insight /NTG. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Her focus areas are diversity, leadership development, performance management, and succession planning. She's previously worked at WestRock, McKesson, Deloitte Consulting, Southern Company, Best Buy, SunTrust Bank, and Georgia Power Company, and that's where we met, where we were doing some consulting work together. She's a graduate of Georgia State University, as am I. By the way, you probably didn't know we had that in common. She got her BBA in business and finance. She's often said, the role itself is not the most important factor. It is doing work that is directly aligned with your passion and goals. She's actively involved in professional mentoring and helping others reach their highest potential. And that's what we're going to talk about today for a good bit. She's passionate about diversity and the concept that all is better when there is plus you. Treva, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. I'm really interested in your answers. And first thing I want you to explain, if you would, is that statement, the role itself is not the most important factor. It's doing work that's directly aligned with your passion and goals. Tell us a little bit about that, your thoughts behind that.
Absolutely. I think there are many times where you hear people say, do something you love, do something that you have passion for, and the money will come, or you won't even think about the money. My statement there is really around the fact that I think we all think about the money. I think we all go to work to make a good living, provide for our families, and do what we need to do in life. But I also think that when you are embarking upon a new career or you're changing careers within one company, it's good to think about what those things are that you're good at. What are you strong at? Really think about what do I do well and what do I get excited by? And not just from the standpoint of find your passion, because I think that's such a broad statement. No one can do that alone. That's my first thing. So make sure you engage others. I would give advice to ask people, what do you think I'm good at? Because just because I think I'm good at something does not mean that I'm good at it. I would ask people around you, what am I really good at? Where do you see me shine? Where do you see me get the most energy? And then go from there. And I think if you do that, probably not going to make a bad decision on a career choice.
Can't you also use performance reviews and see what managers have evaluated and saying this is something and add that in?
Absolutely. So one of the things I always coach my employees to think about is to think about the conversation that you're having, not just the ratings on the performance review, because so much of that is around ratings and what your pay increase might be, but to really have good dialogue with your leader around, this is what I'd like to do in the future. How am I doing today in my current role? And what is it that you see me maybe doing 3 years out? And if I want to do X, do I have to close any gaps to get there? And really have the dialogue. I think the most important part of the performance review is the conversation between the employee and the manager.
So you're coaching people that the performance evaluation is really a significant part of your career progression.
Absolutely.
That you should be using that. It's interesting because you know that I taught the performance enhancing feedback course.
Yes.
And so many managers and or leaders, and we're going to talk about that because we know there's a difference there. They really just hate that process.
Yeah.
They don't want to engage in it. So let's say that you've got one of your employees or one of the people that you're working with has a manager who is of that vein where they're really going to go, hey, just kind of take a look at this and sign off on it.
Right.
And you're coaching them to, let's have a really good discussion. What do you say to them
Yeah.
with a manager who might be resistant
Yeah.
to even having that? Because now you're expecting more of the manager in the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a little bit of a guard that's put up on both sides, right? When you go into a performance review. So I, as the employee, am going in wondering, oh my gosh, how did I do? How are they going to rate me? All those things, right? Which can cause a little bit of anxiety. Same thing happens with the managers, right? Coming into those performance reviews, there can be a little bit of anxiety around, I want to make sure I take care of my employee, that I'm actually giving them good feedback. So I think there's sometimes a wall on both sides. The key that I share with everyone is take down the walls. When you go into the performance review, it should be a feel-good place, because if you've had conversations all throughout the year with your manager about how am I doing, the performance review should not be a surprise, right? And I think we get into that a lot with it being a shock factor, and it really shouldn't be, because what I would say to the employees is make sure you're spending time with your managers throughout the year. Even if, they're not reaching out, reach out to them. Can I set aside 30 minutes to talk to you about my career? I'm having a challenge in this area. Can I talk to you about it? That way, when you get to the end of the year, when you get to that performance review, those walls that I'm talking about, they literally will be removed. It's all about the conversation. And both parties have to be willing. Absolutely.
I'm smiling at what your advice is, because it is completely aligned with what I talk to people about. And that is, you have a responsibility to take care of your career. And one of those is to secure meetings with your manager.
Absolutely.
And I even did a video recently talking about what are you holding your manager accountable for?
Yep.
Typically we see this the opposite way around, where managers say, if I'm the manager and you're the employee, let me tell you what I'm going to hold you accountable for. Mm-hmm. And in the video I talk about, you need to be telling your manager, let me tell you what I'm holding you accountable for.
You're so right.
Things like, I'm holding you accountable for being honest with me, for telling me the truth, for getting together for being available
Making
to me.
time for me. Absolutely.
The time to do that.
You're exactly right. I mean, it's all about the dialogue. And if you take the pressure out of the situation, the anxiety, the fear sometimes, even from an employee perspective, if you're having those ongoing conversations, you're exactly right. Throughout that year, by the time I get to the end of the year, I know exactly where I stand. I've gotten some feedback. I've gotten better at some things, hopefully. Maybe even my strengths have been heightened a bit, but it should feel like a really good end to the year. And that's really what I encourage managers and employees to think about. Think of the performance review as a closing of the year in a good way, not necessarily something that gives people anxiety or something that you wish you didn't have to be a part of.
Yeah, so we're in agreement there.
Yeah.
Performance management is not something that you do twice a year or one time a year when you're doing a formal performance review.
Correct.
This should be an ongoing conversation that you have, where you can have these conversations about any little issue before they become big issues.
Correct.
And then when you get to the performance review, it is truly what is characterized by nomenclature. It is a review.
Exactly. Just a review. You're so right.
Let me ask you this question. So we've got somebody, because I know that a lot of people will always ask me, Craig, I get it. I know what you're suggesting that I do, but I don't know how to say that to somebody. So if I was your employee and you're my manager or you're my coach now, and I'm saying to you, Treva, I've got a manager who barely talks to me. They reluctantly get together with me twice a year. It's really not what you just characterized as a real review that's helpful to me, because really this is designed for everybody, not just the manager.
Right.
But I want to get to what you're suggesting. I want to get to where my manager and I have these ongoing conversations, sometimes very short conversations, sometimes just checking in with them, and they've been reluctant to that. Give me a statement. What would you say? How can I approach my manager? And when I get there, what would I say?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I would say is, first and foremost, go to your manager in the most authentic way. And what I mean by that is, go to your manager and say, just want to let you know, I've been thinking about my career. I enjoy the team. I enjoy working for you, if that's the case. And then just literally say, do you have 30 minutes where we can just chat about, I'm thinking about my future, I'm thinking about a couple of goals. I also want to make sure I'm doing a good job for you. I want to make sure that I'm giving everything that I can to the team, and wanted to get your perspective on that. Would really enjoy it. That's the first meeting. When you land that, you get into that 30-minute meeting. That's a simple conversation. It's really just follow up on what you just said, right? Asking how you're doing, getting the feedback, maybe talking a little bit about what you want to do in the future and if your manager sees you there. And then at the very end of that conversation, I would say, this has gone so well. And even if it hasn't gone, let's say, extremely well, right?
I like where you're going now.
You know exactly where this is headed.
I do.
Even if it hasn't gone extremely well, you say, I would love to be able to do this every quarter.
There you go.
Would you mind?
There you go.
I'm going to go ahead and put it on the calendar. And I think one thing an employee can always add is, I know things come up. I know that you might be, we may have to move this. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with this meeting shifting in whatever way it needs to. I just really value the time with you. And it makes me a better employee, and I can get the job done for you much better if we have this dialogue. That would be my script.
And I love it. And I love it. So those of you who are in that position, write that down. Replay this if you need to. Write that down. We've given you the verbiage to go in with and talk to the manager about that. The beautiful part of what we just laid out is that this is not just an employee saying, I need this from my manager to benefit me.
Right.
I love the part where you said, and I want to make sure I'm doing a good job for you.
Yeah.
I think that one of the key components to having good conversations like this is saying, there's something I want, and I know there's something I want to give you.
Absolutely.
And I want this, and in essence, the manager who's reluctant, what I'm hearing you say is, the manager who's reluctant to have these meetings, if employees will come to that manager and pull them out and get them doing them, have you not, as an employee, helped your manager become a better manager?
Tremendously.
To now be able to have those meetings with everybody.
Tremendously. Absolutely. Completely agree. And the bottom line is, you and your manager are winning together. The hope is that you're winning this career journey or whatever those deliverables are you have in your organization together. It's not you on an island. It's not your manager on an island. No leader, no manager is successful without a great team. And in order for that to happen, you deserve to be able to go to your manager and say, I want to do my best work for you. I just need this time to be able to do that effectively.
All right, let's take that to the next level, because we set it up. At least I believed we set it up where the manager's going to respond to that, and then you're going to have these meetings, and everything's going to be hunky dory down the road. Let's play it out where that doesn't happen. So now we use this approach, which I believe will work with most people. But let's talk about the manager who's really not open to this and gives you, well, I'm really not sure that's necessary. I think you're doing a good job. I really, and in essence, in a lot of different ways, is saying, I don't have time for you. So then I come back to you and I say, Treva, I did what you suggested with my manager, and that's what they said. They didn't say those words, but they conveyed that message that they really don't want to spend that much time with me. And I am wanting, going back to our original point, I'm wanting to find out what I'm really good at, where I can go in my career, what opportunities. And so one thing we talked about is assess yourself and say, what do I think I'm good at? What do I enjoy? I can ask other people, what do I do at that point? Because now I don't have the assistance of this manager that I was really hoping through this very professional, very respectful way of talking to them. They didn't respond to that. Where do I go? What's your advice for that person?
Yeah, so look, that happens. And what I would say is it's not one try. Don't give up. That's my favorite line, right? Never give up. And so you have to go back and try to have that same conversation again for a couple of reasons. One is, could have been a bad day. Right? We all have them. Manager could have been busy, stuff going on. Maybe it was just like, I don't have time today. Don't be defeated. That's what I tell all of my employees and people that I coach. Don't be defeated. So go back. So keep trying that angle. The other angles that you can use is, instead of that angle, maybe go to your manager and say, I would love to get a mentor. I would love to have someone I could talk to about my career that's maybe been with the organization for a very long time, has some expertise in the things that I do every day or something I'm looking to do in the future. Who do you recommend? Your manager can be helpful in multiple ways, not just this one spoke on the wheel. So go back, continue to ask the question around having the meeting, but then go back and ask a different question. Okay, so you asked for the meeting, didn't get it. You asked again, you didn't get it. Maybe that third time, I would say ask for a mentor. And then own, again, accountability, and then say, would love to be able to talk to someone, but I need your guidance. I need your insight. I need you to tell me who in the company would you even recommend I have this conversation with about my career. And I think that does a couple of things, right? One is it allows your manager another opportunity to help you, because I think most managers, I really believe this, have no intent to make you feel like they don't care about your career. It's a couple of reasons that we've already highlighted as to why it may be happening. But you have to be strong in it. You have to go back. And my next approach will be to go back the same way you went last time, but then to also add the element of, could I get a mentor? And then leverage that mentor in the very same way that you would have leveraged your manager. The only difference would be they probably don't have line of sight into your day-to-day work. However, they would have line of sight maybe into how you work, your style, those other things, those intangibles, right? Because it's not just what we deliver, it's how we deliver as well. Do people want to work with us? Very important. So
yeah, I love you talking about mentoring, and I think that is an area that I see so many employees not availing themselves of.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about that, but we're going to take a short commercial break right now. You've been listening to Big in Biz with DiViz. Stay tuned. We'll come back in 1 minute with more of Treva Presley. The number one reason why most people are unsuccessful is that they hate doing the work. Man, I don't even want to think about getting prepared. For those of you who are really struggling with, I don't really want to do the work, I've done most of the work for you. I've made the process easier. All you got to do is pick up one piece of material and everything that you need is there. I guarantee it. I've got thousands of students from my classes who've been successful using this approach. I know it works. You need to up your game. You can do it, but you got to figure out what's the best way for me to do it. You know you need to start preparing now. Everything that I knew over 40 years is in my book and in my interviewing skills online course. Everybody's got a favorite learning style. All you got to do is watch it, read it, listen to it. See ya. And we're back talking with Treva Presley. Where we left off was talking about mentors. And I got a follow-up question to something that you mentioned. You mentioned asking your manager, and of course we identified not a lot of employees do this. Mm-hmm. This is an area that can really help you grow your career in the right way, getting people, if somebody's willing to mentor, mm-hmm. they have all the best interest at heart. And that's one of the things we want to capitalize on. So we go to the manager who was really not that interested in having conversations with us, and we ask them a question about a mentor, and they struggle and they go, well, I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Absolutely.
Because I want to give people who try this the hard. You're going to have a hard road. I want to make it easier for you. Yeah. And if you bump up against the manager who's not really interested in having conversations and goes, well, I'm not sure, I can't really think of anybody. My suggestion for people is to say, I'm looking for somebody who, and to identify some parameters of what you're looking. What would be some of those parameters that you would say, okay, I'm going to my manager and I want to get a name or two names or maybe even three names so that I can choose the one that works best for me. What would we help them with in terms of parameters?
Yeah, so I would say, and you really mean in terms of selecting someone, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would say, look, the biggest thing that I learned around mentoring is I want to be mentored usually by someone who's not like me. And I think it's a very hard thing to do. We typically want to be mentored by people who are just like us via style, passion, the work we do. Step outside the box. Ask for someone that is completely opposite of you. And what that does is a couple of things, right? Gives you a different lens because they're not
So you're talking about different in the sense of personality or skill set or
absolutely
or all
personality, skill set,
Okay.
all of those things that you think about. you don't want a mirror image of yourself, you know? So I think having someone who's not a mirror image of you in all those ways is a great learning mechanism, right? And again, it could be someone too that's not necessarily doing the same type of work that you do. That's okay. A mentor is really about providing you with expertise, guidance, advice. It's not a performance review, right? This is someone who's there to give you advice, guidance, and to really hold up the mirror and say, you know what? Over the course of 6 months that over the course of the 6 months that I've known you, here's what I'm seeing. Stylistically, you come across a little XYZ, right? Whatever that is. Then you can have that real dialogue. So a lot of people want a mentor who's just like them, went to the same school, you know, do the same, have the same hobby.
What's the risk of that?
The risk of going with someone not like you?
What's the risk of choosing somebody just like yourself?
Yeah.
Which is what you said most people will probably, unless advised otherwise, gravitate to.
Yeah, that's a great question. The risk that I have found, I have chosen a mentor in life that was just like me, and I can tell you what ended up happening was we didn't really learn a lot from each other.
Okay.
We supported each other. It was almost, you know, I hate to say it, but it was codependency to a certain degree. You know, the things that I was doing that maybe did not rub people so well, they weren't highlighted in our conversation because we both felt like this is exactly what I should be doing. This is the right approach because we shared that.
They're leading you. You know, as I thought about that question, I'm thinking that your answer would be exactly what it was. They're going to be leading you probably right where they are.
Right.
It's like if you want to be them, then pick somebody who's like you, who's going to say, "Hey, you got the same skill set, the same personality. Come be me."
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe that's not necessarily the best advice that you can get.
And I think to make it really concrete, you know, and I'm not afraid to admit this, being very vulnerable here, but one of the things I love doing is flying high in my work. So I am the strategy person, the big thinker, always want to push the envelope and do things, try things, do things differently. So I'm always thinking about 2 years from today. What I know about myself, though, is when I need to think about today, when I need to think about the work ahead of me in the next 5 to 6 months, I need someone around me who thinks for today, who doesn't fly so high. So when I look for mentors, I look for people who are visionaries, but they also like the detail of where are we right now. And what that does is that pulls my thinking down, not in a bad way, but in a way that helps me perform my job, to be a better human, but to also be a better leader. And I think that's a great example of seeking out someone who really complements your strengths, but also gives you lessons and advice around the things that you're constantly working on. And I don't want it to seem like this is a negative when I say constantly working on. When I talk about flying high and wanting to have someone who kind of flies high but also gets into the weeds a little bit, what I mean by that is that's just my preference. I can get in those weeds, but my preference is to really be a visionary and strategic thinker. So I want someone alongside me who can say, you know what, for this particular project or what you're trying to do, think about it this way. And that's been so helpful for me in terms of identifying mentors, you know.
Yeah, and I would think one of the pieces of advice I'm sure you give people is just because your mentor suggested this, don't wholesale buy into that. You've got to use your own filter and say, thank you very much. You gave that information willingly in an attempt to help me, but that one just doesn't fit with me.
Absolutely.
And to be that judge of what you're going to act on and what maybe you're not going to act on.
You're exactly right. The most important element of a mentoring relationship is trust. If you haven't built that, then literally you should probably reconsider the relationship, because you want it to be a trusting relationship. You want to be able to trust this person, and you want to be able to say, you know what, I hear your idea, but let me push back on it a little. You want to be able to have that dialogue, right? Because to me, that's healthy. When I'm walking away thinking, I don't think I'm going to put that in my pocket, I probably should have had that conversation to push a little bit and not just say, well, I'm not going to do, let me probe a little and see why you recommended that. I still have liberty to say no.
I love that question.
Yeah.
You know, when somebody says, this is what I suggest for you, I'm interested in why.
Why?
I'm not challenging it.
Yep.
I just want to understand. Because when people understand, you know, say, go do, you know, to be successful, go do this and this and this. And if you say why, and the person can't give you a good answer, number one, maybe they don't know the answer.
Right.
Maybe they've just been given those 5 steps and don't really know what's behind that.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of, hey, you want to feel comfortable in the mentoring relationship, I believe, to challenge the person and say, yeah, I got that. I heard you, I don't really understand it, or I understand it in this way and it doesn't seem to be a fit.
Yeah.
So what am I missing? And that's what I hear you
That's the
talking
key.
about, that dialogue, that really honest, genuine, I'm not just going to buy wholesale everything you say.
Yep.
We're going to bang it around a little bit.
Love it. And then you can walk away, even if you don't use the information or the advice. You still walk away both being whole, meaning the mentor is not going to feel like, wow, they just didn't really like my advice and never even followed up. You've had the dialogue, so that mentor is walking away knowing full well you might use it, you might not, but we've had the conversation. So you're exactly right.
Yeah, let's fly a little bit higher. You talked about flying higher. Let's go to the 50,000 foot view. And you talked about earlier, before we started the podcast, you talked a little bit about career advice for women in particular. And as you said that, the questions that came to my mind is it different than you would give men? Is it different for different people or different women at different stages of their careers? Talk a little bit about that. Go wherever you want to go.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily that it is different. I think we all just have a different lens, right? And I think I can only speak for myself in terms of my career. And I oftentimes get the question, you sacrifice so much for your career. And when I hear that question, I probe a little, just like with mentoring. I probe on, what do you think I've sacrificed? And usually what I get back is, well, you don't have children, you're not married, so you've given those things up. And what I always share with my female mentees is, never do something because you feel like you're giving something up. I don't necessarily believe in that. In my life, I don't feel like I've given up anything. This is just the course. And so what I always share with women is, just run the path, whatever that path looks like, and don't be locked into what the world thinks you should be doing. Maybe the pressures you put on yourself, because I do think some of that is a little bit more specific to women, just because I get that question a lot about what I've sacrificed. And I also share with women, be your authentic self. I have always been Treva, never going to change. And I feel very confident in who I am. Now, have I been in situations where I have felt like I've had to be different or needed to be different? Absolutely. And what the advice that I always give is, when you feel that way, step back from the moment and really make a decision on whether or not you're about to change who you are as a human being. Because once you do it, once you flip the switch, it is very difficult to go back. And so that's the advice. So it's a different lens. It's not necessarily that the advice is different for men. I have given the same advice to men. And have shared with them, be who you are, come to work whole, come to your career whole. But this notion of sacrifice, I find it very interesting when I get that question, especially as I've gotten higher in my career. It has tended to come up a lot more. And I share with women the honesty in that, and I think that women do a really good job in some cases of supporting one another and having this dialogue. But I think it's also very healthy to have the dialogue, not just with your female friends, but with men as well, right? And having those conversations that are sometimes difficult to have around, the workplace and how I'm feeling in the workplace, or what I'm doing in the workplace, or how I'm showing up. Feedback can come from anyone. It shouldn't just come, again, we're back to the mentoring, right? I don't just get feedback from people that look like me, that share my same, passions. I go to everyone and say, how am I doing? What do you think? And I truly believe most people come in honesty and I think they come authentically if you're asking the question.
In addition to that issue of what have you sacrificed, what are some of the other things, or at least another question that you get asked fairly often from women about managing their careers?
Yeah, I think one question that comes up that I get pretty often is this notion of assertive versus aggressive. And how I am perceived. And so how do I show up well as a female leader, but without aggression? How do I make sure I'm assertive, but that I'm not overly so? And I think sometimes that pressure is self-imposed, right, depending on the situation. But the guidance that I always give is, check yourself at the door, right? Before you say anything, type anything, respond to anything, think it through. And I would give the same advice to men, that it has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. That's what I would tell anyone. I think what happens is we tend to overcompensate sometimes, all of us, not just women, right? We want to give the answer quickly. And so what I would say is, when you're in those moments where you feel like you're about to be on the line of assertive or aggressive, take a pause, right? Maybe respond later or the next day, and to be okay with that. Because a lot of times we respond because we feel like we don't have the luxury of waiting. But I share with my mentees all the time, silence is still very golden. I know it's an old cliche, but it is golden. And you sometimes do your best thinking when you take that pause.
And to give yourself some time, I advise people respond to the person simply with let me think about that, and I will get back to you and give them a time frame.
Yep.
So now they're not sitting there waiting and interpreting you're not responding in whatever way they want to.
Yep.
You've given them some information. Hey, just take a seat. I'll be with you in just a minute. And then you go, okay, fine. She'll get back with me in a such and such a time.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about, let's say we've got one of those sensitive messages to deliver, which we're a little bit concerned about. Is it going to be interpreted as aggressive or truly assertive? And that sliding scale has changed.
Yes.
What used to be aggressive, having taught the assertiveness class for over 30 years now, I get that same question from women. So I wasn't surprised when you came up with that. Hey, I don't know if I say that, it's going to be taken differently than if a man would say that very same thing. What's your thinking about, and I know that we can't always do this because of right now of COVID and of people working remotely and all this kind of thing. But we've got text messages, we've got email messages, we've got voice messages, and we've got face-to-face. What's your advice? The more sensitive the issue, the more, what are you going to suggest for somebody?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, look, aggression is a perception. Right. I truly believe it is how whatever you're saying or messaging is perceived. And so when people ask the question, what they're saying is, I don't want to be perceived as aggressive, right? I just want to be assertive. And so my advice would be, yes, take that pause, but you can still be powerful and strong and stand your ground in an email, a text, verbally, and not have to worry so much about the words. So I really tell people, get out of the words. Don't even think about assertive or aggressive. When I talk about being aggressive, what I really mean is go into any message, any communication, any contact with respect, authenticity, and data and facts, right? So if you've got those three things in business, you pretty much are going to be okay, because it's all in the how. I talked a lot about the how, the what we do and the how we do it. This is a stylistic issue. And so I think what people are really asking is, when I'm writing those messages or I'm having this conversation, how do I make sure I've got all the elements so that it never is even thought about whether it's assertive or aggressive?
Yeah.
And I would say if you've got those three elements, or at least some components of those, right, then you're okay. But I'm really trying to encourage people to take the words out of it, because I really don't have a problem with the word aggressive. I just worry when people are perceived as only that it can be hurtful to their career. And I don't think that people typically come from a spirit of being aggressive in a disrespectful way. So it's all about respect.
Yeah, this communication issue, I used to use a video in one of my classes, and it identified 80% of business problems are communication problems.
Yeah.
People really struggle with that. One of the things that I suggest is, the more critical the message, the more you really want to strive to be there face to face with the person.
Yep.
Because then you can because then it's back and forth.
Exactly.
It's not a one-way message where the person reads it and then goes off in left field
Yes.
thinking what they want to think about it.
Yes,
So
yes.
I want to, we're closing out the session, but I want to ask you a little bit more about diversity, because I know you wanted to talk about that. You've got this concept, plus you,
Yeah.
that everything is better plus you. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's something that I've used, a few times, and really what it is to inspire people to think about diversity really from a place of, I know I keep saying authenticity, but when I think about diversity, there's so many facets of it. And right now we are in a place where I think some people feel like the things that are done can be a checklist sometimes. You see kind of the same things happening around diversity from a corporate perspective all over that are just checklists. What I really mean by plus you is that anything is better plus you. And what I mean by that is, anytime you come to a company, when you bring your whole self to work, stylistically, ethnicity, gender, all those things that we think about when we think about diversity, everything gets better when we keep adding the plus yous. And so I think if people think about it like that and take away all the layers of what a person looks like, because that's really what some of the focus is right now. If you take all that away and just really say to people, I want the whole you, because everything's better with you here, that's a powerful message to me in terms of coming to an organization that believes in that. So, for me as an African American female, Black female, I do feel like if someone said that to me, I would be so excited and energized, right? Because the other part of it is there have been times where I think you could be made to feel, that maybe you're getting a job because you're a minority, or you're getting a job because you're female. And no one wants to feel that way. I've worked really hard in my career. I've been very fortunate that the organizations that I've worked for have really shown me pieces of that Plus You statement before I joined. It's the reason I'm at the company I'm at now, at Transportation Insight. But I think the beauty of it is in the how we do it. It's not the what around diversity, it's the how. And I really want to change the messaging around what we're saying.
I'm excited to hear you say that, because I have pushed back against a lot of the messaging, the way these programs get rolled out. It is oftentimes when it becomes mandated by the government or whatever that you hit certain numbers, then it gets rolled out in the company and it's a mandatory training and you're forced to go through it, and they're really, from my perspective, is not the attractiveness of diversity. Let me tell you what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. Let me tell you the benefit of doing it. Let me tell you how everybody benefits when we flesh this out. And we've got a little bit, and they're not focusing on that. So I think that you're right on target there with your messaging. We're out of town. Well, we might be out of town. But we are out of time, Treva, but I want to give you one last opportunity to close this out. What message do you have for the viewers around careers, around diversity, around whatever you choose?
Yeah, what I would say is, if you have to play this on a loop, do so, right? I mean, the advice is purely coming from a place of growth for me. Things I have done personally in my career. So I don't sit to say these things because it is the nature of my job. I've actually lived everything that I'm talking about: performance management, mentoring, trying to find a coach, all those things. So what I would share with people is really be proud of what you bring to the table, whether it be to the organization, whether it be to your entrepreneurial opportunity, whatever that is, be proud of everything that you bring. But most importantly, know exactly what you bring and know exactly what you need help with. Once you do that, when you get these mentors, when you have this performance review conversation, when you're having conversations about, female leadership, you're actually in a better place because you've got your 3-minute elevator speech. I know who I am, I know what I'm good at, and more importantly, I know where I need help. And I can go now and seek people out that are good at it and help me through it. So that would be my message.
Great advice, and you heard it here from Treva Presley.
Thank you.
That's it for another edition of Big in Biz with DiViz. I want to thank you for watching. Until next time, stay cool, have good thoughts. See ya.